Today we are going to do a little bit deeper dive into this. A couple of videos that I've had over the past week that have kind of gone semi-viral are all about this 0.21 Bitcoin and embodied AI. So today I wanted to kind of slow down the conversation a little bit, kind of fill in some of the gaps. It's difficult, when I'm doing these sort of presentation videos, I'm kind of plowing through it because I want to try to hold your attention and also not go down rabbit trails. So today I want to just kind of use this time to clear up the 0.21 confusion and set the record straight on the labor obsolescence piece. I've been reading and absorbing a lot of Jordi Visser's work, and we'll go through some of that as well. But the video that I published last Friday, I went through in great detail, I think, the embodied AI and the problem that's creating in the labor market based on the research that I've done into Jordi Visser's work. And what I neglected to cover was the 0.21 Bitcoin angle sufficiently, because in my mind, when I'm doing these videos, I'm like, oh, these guys have already heard me talk about 0.21 Bitcoin, because I've done probably 8 videos on the benefit of and why you should own 0.21 Bitcoin. So I had people, not you guys that are regular, that are subscribers and sort of regular watchers of my channel, but, always the same crowd that are like screaming at you that you've, kind of left something out or that you were misleading them somehow. So anyway, but before we get started, I just wanted to kind of run through where we are price-wise. It looks like we've had, a little bit of a dip today. I believe we were up at 97K. So we're at 95.53. Block height is 932.415. So that's rolling along. I like to look at this. It's not really a chart, but this list of assets every day. I mean, it's just amazing to see like how gold and silver have just broken out. I mean, silver's $92 an ounce. I remember, 10 years ago, it was languishing around the $15 an ounce, area. And then, obviously we see Bitcoin, it's, just close to touching that $2 trillion mark again, which is great. And this has been interesting. I think yesterday the fear and greed index was, I want to say it was in the 40s. It might have been in the 20s, but man, it really, really jumped up toward the green greed in there. So before we get started with talking about 0.21 Bitcoin, I wanted to watch this video together. I kind of showed a clip of it in my video a couple of days ago, but I think this is really going to set the stage for what we're going to talk about in terms of embodied AI, humanoid robots, kind of taking over. So this video is really just a great example of wow, these things have really come a long way in a very short period of time. So if this is where we are now, where are we going to be in 5 years? And then, we'll relate that to what Jordi Visser talks about.
Our story this week is about humanoid robots, and one in particular, a humanoid robot made by Boston Dynamics named Atlas. Atlas is making the move from the lab to the factory floor, and we were invited to come see it as it was tested at a Hyundai plant outside Savannah, Georgia. I think I used the word mind-blowing in the piece. It's astounding. They call it a humanoid, but he stands up in a way no human could possibly stand up. His limbs can bend in ways ours can't.
This robot is capable of superhuman motion.
Robert Plater is CEO of Boston Dynamics.
The neat thing that this new robot can do that I have not seen before is all of its joints can rotate a full 360 degrees. Well, that's beyond what you and I can do. And we think that's the way you should build robots. Don't limit yourself to what people can do, but actually go beyond.
We went to the headquarters in Waltham, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. It's a huge facility. 60 Minutes went to Boston Dynamics back in 2021 and saw an earlier version of Atlas, and it was bulkier and didn't move quite as seamlessly as the one we saw. We saw Atlas running. He can do the Macarena. He could do cartwheels. He could dance. I mean, they've made tremendous progress.
There we go.
I mean, for us to turn around, we have to physically turn around. I have to turn around and look the other direction. Atlas just pivots on his core. He can move in ways that we can only dream of. Scott Kindersma is head of robotics research at Boston Dynamics.
So why did you design it that way?
There's a couple advantages of being able to continuously rotate joints. So one is that the robot's not really limited in its range of motion. So it can do things and turn in directions that people just couldn't. Another reason is one of the reliability issues that you often find in robots is that their wires start to break over time. And that's because
I didn't know any of this until I watched this. This is all new to me, just how far this has come in such short a period of time.
You have wires that go across all the moving parts. And in the case of Atlas, we don't have any wires that go across those rotating parts anymore.
I think the thing that is most astounding about Atlas is that it seems to actually be learning. Atlas has a brain that is powered by the most powerful NVIDIA chips, and it can learn in different ways. We saw one, they used a teleoperator. That's somebody who is standing beside Atlas, actually controlling Atlas's arms and hands to pick up things and move them over and over and over again until Atlas can actually do it without the teleoperator moving its hands. So why does he only have 3 fingers?
Robot hands are an extremely complex engineering problem. Human hands are incredible machines that are very versatile. We can do many, many different manipulation tasks with the same hand. And so when we design hands for Atlas, they don't look exactly like human hands, but they have a lot of the same capabilities.
That's
Here you can
crazy.
see that they can switch between different modes. They can act as if they were a hand with these 3 digits, or this digit can swing around and act more like a thumb. And this is really important because it allows the robot to have different shape grasps, to have two-finger opposing grasps to pick up small objects, and then also make its hands very wide in order to pick up large objects.
Can it sense the pressure that's needed, or how much it can press on something like this?
So there's tactile sensors, which give it pressure information from each of the fingers. And so you can use that as input to the neural network so that it knows how to do more fine-grained dexterous manipulation tasks. Being able to precisely control not only the shape and the motion, but the force of the grippers is actually an interesting challenge. I think there's still a lot of opportunity to improve teleoperation systems so that we can do even more dexterous manipulation tasks with robots.
There is quite a bit of hype around these humanoids right now. Financial institutions predict that we will be living with millions, if not billions, of robots in our future. We're not there yet. Atlas is sort of the first step. Is the humanoid hype getting ahead of reality?
There is definitely a hype cycle right now. Part of that is created by the optimism and enthusiasm we see for the potential. But while software can sort of move ahead at super speeds, these are machines, and building reliable machines takes time. And adapting our styles of work and our economy to these new classes of machines will also take time. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of work to be done to sort of get there. These robots have to be reliable, they have to be affordable. That will take time to deploy.
Yeah, so I'd love to know in the chat, what do you guys think about that? That there was just, a lot of this is new to me. I haven't really had a lot of exposure. I mean, I knew about Boston Dynamics and I'd seen the robot dog and I'd seen the earlier version of Atlas. But this new version that they were showing is like, wow, it's just crazy. So, so today I want to just reiterate, because a lot of you guys that are part of the community here are aware of all this stuff, but I just want to buttress some of these points. 0.21 Bitcoin, it actually matters, just kind of the TLDR on that. How in Jordi Visser's report, and we'll go into deep detail on this, why Embodied AI detaches capital and labor. Like, Q3 of last year is really when the numbers started showing that. And then just kind of how to respond both strategically and tactically to these emerging realities. Because a lot of this stuff is really, I know, for me, I have very mixed emotions about it. I'm sitting here, I'm not sitting here being a cheerleader for it necessarily, but I do want to understand it both from an investor mindset as well as, just a fellow human being mindset, because I think this is going to be massively disruptive. So the TLDR on 0.21 Bitcoin is that it's still affordable for now. You can kind of think of it like we talk about this a lot on this channel, high yield savings account. So Bitcoin in self-custody, on-chain Bitcoin in self-custody is kind of your high yield savings account. It puts you in the top elite 1% of holders. So if you own 0.21 Bitcoin, you essentially own 1/1,000,000th of the network. And if you think about, 8 billion people on the planet and how many people will actually ever be able to hold that much Bitcoin, there are lots of arguments against that. I see them all the time in the comments, and I'll address some of those. It gives you a massive hedge against inflation. Now, that may seem like a kind of a contradictory statement, given the fact that Bitcoin's performance in 2025 was massively disappointing. But what you have to do, there's a saying in the space, when in doubt, back out. So you want to look at, inflation, and you want to look at Bitcoin's, performance over a 4 to 5 year period. So when I'm coaching, private clients, or when I'm talking to my audience, especially if you're just getting into Bitcoin, essentially what I'm recommending is if whatever you're putting into Bitcoin, don't even look at it for 4 to 5 years. Like, you want to be in this is the transition that a lot of people have to make from being a consumer or even a saver to being an investor. So you really want to have more of an investor mindset. Now, that said, it is a 24/7 liquid market. So that's why you can call it a high yield savings account, because if you run into an emergency, and hopefully it's appreciated by the time you have to do that, you can liquidate it, or you can liquidate part of it. It gives you a foothold in the emerging digital asset economy. So you're hearing all these things about tokenization and how you're going to be able to buy fractional, shares of homes or buildings, or, there's this tokenization economy that is, we're very close to it. The benefits of digital scarcity as capital decouples from labor, and don't worry, I'll kind of massage out, what those definitions are here in a minute. Plus, at today's price, and this is not exactly accurate, it's about it's between 19 and 20,000 per 0.21 Bitcoin. And so the strategy that we employ with a lot of our clients, especially if they're getting into it, or whatever their journey is to just dollar cost average at 0.001 Bitcoin at a time. And then I'll have people ask me in the comments, well, why 0.21 Bitcoin? Some people say 0.1, some people say 0.21. Why not 0.5 or a whole Bitcoin? By the way, just a short interruption. If we're just meeting, I'm Brad, and I'm on a mission to empower millennials and Gen X to integrate Bitcoin more deeply into their personal finances so they can reach financial independence in 10 years or less. The point of 0.21 is that it's not a hard and fast rule. You don't have to follow that. You don't have to target that. You can target less than that, or you can target more than that. You just have to adjust to your personal situation. So when I'm coaching my private clients, we always have to have targets. We always have to be aiming at something. So 0.21, I would say, for the vast majority of the middle to upper middle class in the United States, this is a really doable goal if you're doing well with your money and you're doing all the things that you should be doing with your money. And so what it means is that you're actually owning a fractional piece of a decentralized, fixed supply, immutable, future global reserve asset that is both money. Bitcoin is money. You can spend it. And we can talk a lot about, if you guys have questions about that, I can answer those as well. And it's also an incredible store of value, again, over the course of at least 4 to 5 years. You got to hold on to it for that long. And in that sense, it's kind of like digital gold. It's important when you're stacking Bitcoin to stop thinking about it in fiat terms, okay? You want to think about it in future terms. And so what I'm trying to do with this, as I'm doing my own due diligence and my own research into AI, the emerging AI economy, embodied AI, which is essentially humanoid robots and other forms of robots that are coming in the future, is really kind of think about this in more of a digital/AI future. Now, because we still live in a fiat world, we still have to keep in mind, and this is one of the ways that we continue to build conviction in Bitcoin, is that our dollars lose value over time. So you've probably found my channel. Maybe you've been in Bitcoin for a while. Maybe you've been in the FIRE movement. Maybe you're just getting out of debt and you're getting into investing. The important thing to remember is that the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar declines continuously. So there's a difference between monetary inflation and price inflation. Price inflation is the outcome of monetary inflation, which monetary inflation just means they're printing more currency. So every unit of that currency is less valuable. You can kind of think about this. In 1913, $1 bought 30 Hershey bars. Now it buys less than one. Although I did have someone point out to me in the comment section that you can get a Hershey bar for at the dollar store, which I think is like $1.25 now. But my argument there would be, yeah, sure, it's maybe one Hershey bar, but the ingredients are, cancer-inducing more than likely, right? It's not the same Hershey bar that it was in 1913. So there's all kinds of other, sort of sub-arguments. But the big one is that dollars lose value over time. And so by conservative estimates, the U.S. dollar lost 9% of its purchasing power over the course of 2025. I think it's actually higher than that. It's higher than that depending on how you parse it out. Like my wife and I have what we call our grass-fed organic ground beef index that we buy at Aldi. And I just remember even just a couple of years ago, it was $3.50, $4 a pound, and now it's at $6.50 a pound, which, depending on where you live in the country, that's still fairly reasonable. But that's just to show you, like, the currency is being debased, and it's being debased on purpose, and it's going to continue to be debased. So you can also look at Bitcoin versus your traditional financial savings, like if you've got a savings account or even a money market account. maybe you're getting, maybe you're getting 1, 2, up to 4% in a money market account. Whereas with Bitcoin, there's this concept of, this concept in investing called compound annual growth rate, which is the CAGR. And at a conservative CAGR for Bitcoin of 35%, I mean, I would say probably over the last 13 years or so, it's been closer to 50%. But if you just want to use that, you put on $100 in year one. By the end of the year, you've got $135. Year two, you don't invest any additional funds. That 135 turns into 182.25. Okay, and then you fast forward to year 10, you've got from $100, you've got $2,000. And then by year 20, you've got $40,000. And again, this is if you're not putting anything additional into it. And obviously, this is assuming a 35% CAGR. It could be much higher than that. I personally think that it's going to be, but I like to be conservative with this stuff. So kind of pivoting over to the embodied AI, the TLDR with that, and just sort of the 30,000 foot overview of what I've been researching in Jordi Visser's work is that the Q3 numbers that, market numbers that came out is that capital can now generate wealth without workers. And so we'll dig into this. His supposition is that meritocracy is mathematically obsolete, at least in the way that we've thought about it before. Bitcoin is the pressure valve for all of this. Now, it's not the only asset. I mean, gold and silver and certain stocks, but this is we like to call this the apex predator asset in the system. So it's the pressure valve, the apex scarcity-based store of value in a post-labor world. So the action, that to walk away from all of this is just to understand this fracture. And I want to jump into some of more deeply into some of Jordi's work. Protect your wealth with Bitcoin, not financial advice, do your own due diligence, but I definitely, recommend looking into it and prepare for a society where AI does the work and scarcity is the thing that defines value. By the way, YouTube tells me only about 16% of you guys that are watching my videos are subscribed. So I would really appreciate it if you like, share, subscribe. It really does help the algorithm push it out to more similar type of people that are looking for this kind of content. So I run into this, and I'm starting to run into this more in the comment sections of these kinds of videos. And this is what I like to call old paradigm thinking. And I think that part of what I'm trying to do myself and what I'm trying to sort of influence, lead my audience into is just a consideration of these fact patterns that, so that we're not all blindsided by these things, because AI is obviously coming for knowledge worker jobs. I think, these numbers will show that, it's already here, but it's also going to come for physical jobs as well. And so we want, as a, middle class, upper middle class, wealthy class, we want to prepare for that. So this commenter says, and I appreciate this because they're actually polite about this. There is a huge amount of innocent ignorance going around the internet surrounding AI and the takeover of jobs. I understand certain jobs that rely on automation, but as for physical trades, we are far off from AI and robotics taking over most physical work. We're not even close. People that sit behind computers all day and speculate about the AI takeover have most likely never worked a physical trades job or built anything with their hands. I mean, no disrespect. I just see this all over the place, and it's flat out incorrect. And I think that, I think that there is, I just respectfully disagree with this commenter. I think that the rapidity of the development of these technologies is really going to catch a lot of people off guard. And so I think it's, it's good for us to dig into this. So, in Jordi Visser's report, essentially he calls Q3 of 2025 capitalism's death certificate. Now, that might sound hyperbolic. I can kind of, as I sort of climb into his head, reading through his work, it sounds less and less, hyperbolic to me. But gross domestic product was 4.3%. That's the fastest growth in 2 years. And that's growth without job creation. Corporate profits, generally speaking, corporate profits were record margins, profit margins, and soaring. Unemployment was 4.6% and growing, and the job growth was zero. So almost zero net jobs were added during Q3. And then I think, all of us are feeling this. Consumer sentiment, 52.9, that's the second lowest consumer sentiment ever, while the S&P 500 index was hitting all-time highs. So is not looking good for the way things have worked in the past, I think is the overarching point. So the bottom line that he draws is that prosperity is now decoupled from labor. Embodied AI is way more than chatbots. You're talking about, a robot that has AI embedded in it that, as we saw in the video a few minutes ago, like it's actually learning, on the spot. It's learning the physical movements and the physical motions on the spot. And one of the things that I can show you guys in a minute is I'm using AI every day, and I can tell you that the chatbots that I'm using are improving the feature sets, the response times. They're literally improving every day. So what do you guys think? I just want to kind of pause here and look at the chat here for a second, and then we'll do more of a proper Q&A toward the end. Hey, Steve says, I'm new to your channel and to Bitcoin. Hey, welcome. Even though I'm down on Bitcoin, I don't see 2025 as a disappointment. It hit 126K, just didn't skyrocket like all the hype masters told us it would. Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Hey, Prueba Roku, good to see you. Sorry you joined a few minutes late. No worries. Yeah, this is like, sort of come as you please whenever you can show up. Obviously, you can rewatch the replay as well. So Tradesman63, thanks for the live, Brad. Yeah, my pleasure. So what do you guys think about this? Is AI coming for your job? Do you have a trades job? I got a comment from another guy that's a truck driver, and he says that basically like robots load his semis. Like he's a long haul truck driver, and he was telling me that like basically no humans load his trailers anymore. It's all robots, which is like, so let's cover some, well, actually, before we go into this, let me go back. I want to talk about, this, Jordy Visser has a Substack that you can subscribe to. I highly recommend doing this if you want to sort of ingest some of the things that I'm ingesting. But his macro analysis from last week, this was published on January 27, is called The Fracturing of Trust in Capitalism, AI Automation, and the Inevitable Rise of Bitcoin. So I'll read through some of this, and then I did sort of like an AI summary, and I'll go through some of the highlights of it. But I think it's really impactful to, go through like exactly how he says this stuff. So the death certificate Q3 2025. The third quarter of 2025 wrote capitalism's obituary in numbers that can't be spun when viewed through an AI lens. Real GDP expanded 4.3%, the fastest pace in 2 years. This followed 3.8% in Q2. Corporate profits surged on the back of record margins. The economy, by every traditional measure, was booming. All this despite tariff fears over the economy and profits. Unemployment rose to 4.6%. Job growth collapsed to near zero. White-collar sectors reported negative outlooks for the first time since 2024. For the first time in capitalist history, robust growth and record margin profits arrived without job creation. So this is significant. You're not hearing anyone really talk about this in the mainstream media. Of course, they don't talk about anything that's not sensational. But even I think in the Bitcoin space, even in the financial independence retire early space, you're not hearing, people really digging into this. This isn't a recession. This isn't a temporary dislocation. This is the system openly announcing your labor is no longer required for our prosperity. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index hit 52.9, the second lowest on record. I covered that a minute ago, while the S&P regularly makes all-time highs. This divergent isn't paradoxical. It's cause and effect. Markets celebrate efficiency. Workers experience efficiency as termination. So what he's saying, and he says I've watched a bunch of podcasts with him on it. Like if you want to watch Anthony Pompliano's podcast, it's a really good one as well. He's talking about the efficiency gains. If you think about it, these AI agents, and this will be true of the humanoids as well, they can work literally at what is 24/7 is, I think it's 162, 168. Somebody tell me in the comments. So where you have, a regular worker can maybe work 40 hours a week, but they need rest, they need a lunch break, they need vacation, where you have these AI agents essentially that can work around the clock. He was likening it to, they have the ability and the knowledge of, 10,000 PhDs at their disposal at all times. So this is, so back to the article, he says, this is the moment the social pact, the 10,000-year bargain between labor and capital officially died. So what he's saying here is like, this is a major this is a major, societal shift, civilizational shift. So a lot of people that are saying that, AI is in a bubble and, the robots are not going to take my jobs. I mean, I think that there's a very, very, there's a tendency toward myopia, especially in the working class, unfortunately. People can politicize all this, but the reality is clear. We just witnessed capitalism aging rapidly. And I won't go into this part. So let me go into, so he talks about, this is sort of my AI summary. Yeah, so why this time is different. Unlimited digital competitors, machines that work 24/7. They never fatigue. They improve about every 6 months with model updates. They possess 10,000 PhDs worth of knowledge. The labor market is flooding. Millions of digital analysts outcompete human catalysts. I'm hearing about people hiring, digital analysts, digital agents, digital employees, essentially. I need to look into more of that. And then meritocracy collapses. A 4-year degree no longer guarantees a wage earning niche, right? The socioeconomic consequences, income squeeze, so obviously you're having sort of this collapse, in demand for human labor. And so, the market is going to be flooded with labor. So the income squeeze, real poverty line in effectively 130 to 150K for a family of 4 versus the official 32K. I have a link to that. It's a Substack from another author that is basically saying that the government a poverty line of 32K a year is actually 130K a year with inflation baked into it. So he's basically saying what we're all seeing, the middle class will erode. Even 70 to 90K often covers basic survival in many metros. I'm in the, just outside the Atlanta area. I mean, I can definitely tell you that, $70,000 to $90,000 for the average American consumer is going to be super, super challenging. Also, the knock-on effects of tax base erosion, fewer workers, less revenue, governments resort to money printing and currency debasement. We're seeing that exactly. Bitcoin is the counterforce. So this is sort of the counterbalance. Why Bitcoin spikes now? It's scarcity. It's all about scarcity. So if you're new to Bitcoin or you're just checking out Bitcoin, that is really the thing that you want to really focus in on, is that digital scarcity of 21 million coins becomes the only trustworthy store of value when labor-driven wealth creation fails. Wealth redistribution, billion-dollar outflows from early Bitcoin holders to millions of new participants. Institutional rotation, so pension funds and other fiduciaries move into Bitcoin as a hedge against a debasing fiat system. Won't go into the fourth turning stuff. That's kind of another topic for a whole other video. I could do a whole other video on the fourth turning. But strategic takeaways, AI basically equals a demolition crew for our economy as we know it, for our society as we know it, destroys the labor-dependent capital model. Bitcoin architectural blueprint encodes scarcity and value independent of productive labor. The action is positioned for this merger. This is a great time. It is kind of scary. It is kind of unnerving, and I'm right there with you. There's a lot of this that I don't. But the sort of solace that you can take in this is that if you are buying Bitcoin, if you do own Bitcoin, this is a scarcity-based asset that's going to, thrive. Also, AI-related assets, while securing Bitcoin or other mathematically scarce source of values, recognize the traditional equity real estate models lose relevance as competitive moats evaporate. Another thing that he talks about in some of his other podcasts is, these moats. That a lot of these software as a service companies, like, you think of Salesforce.com, you think of any software, like those moats are going to evaporate because there is this new phenomenon called vibe coding, where literally somebody like me who has no coding experience, no ability to write code or build software, I can literally tell an AI agent what I want to build, and it will build it by writing the code for me. So now you have these, and this is going to be, this industry, the SaaS industry, is going to be in denial for a long time about this. But I came out of the SaaS, the software as a service enterprise sales industry. That was the last 5 years of my corporate, sort of career. And I know that, part of his narrative is that, the cost of coding is going to go to zero. So a lot of shocking sort of stuff in there, I know. But let's talk about, let's kind of pivot over from, the big scary sort of picture and cover some acquisition tactics, how to get to 0.21 Bitcoin. And again, this is, depending on where you are. These prices are not going to be super accurate, but this is just meant to give you, sort of an outline. So let's say you wanted to get to 0.21 Bitcoin in 21 months. So that is, so the current price that I, sort of created this slide deck with was 90K. So we're a little bit above that. And so you would need to invest, somewhere between 900 and 1,000 per month at these current price ranges, right? So this model does blow up if Bitcoin, goes to the moon, but it's just better to have this dollar cost averaging sort of mindset. So in 21 months, somewhere between $900 and $1,000 a month, you'll have your 0.21 Bitcoin. If you wanted to, curtail that to 21 weeks, you could do 904, somewhere between 900 and 1,000 a week. But I think it's important, in sales especially, we talk about, when we're presenting to a client, kind of breaking things down to the ridiculous, breaking it down to, okay, cool. $900, $1,000 a week. What is that, per day? Or if it's 21 months, what is that, per day? Like, what can I buy Bitcoin if I want to dollar cost average it? What would that break down to per day? This is where, the acquisition process is where it's really important to have, a system in place. If you're new to Bitcoin or the FIRE movement, or, maybe you have debt that you're trying to pay off. So I have a 17-year career as a financial coach to the middle class. So I basically came out of the Dave Ramsey School of Thought. So I'm a big proponent of going back and helping clients organize their entire financial picture, cash flow planning, which is basically budgeting, tracking their expenses. Those three skills are like non-negotiable. If you go and you read, Thomas Stanley's Millionaire Next Door, like the actual average American millionaire has this skill set down. It's not the one that everybody, it's not the image of the millionaire that we all sort of have in our imagination. They drive a Mercedes and they live in a huge house. Like the average American millionaire lives very modestly, actually. And then when you move into the financial independence, retire early movement, you're increasing your savings rate. When my wife and I were in our last 5-year stretch of that, we were able to increase our savings rate from 70 to 80% of our income. So that meant that we were living on 20 to 30% of our income those years while we were just stacking. We were saving, we were investing, buying Bitcoin, dollar cost average investing as a habit. Commit to buying a lot of assets. Bitcoin is the apex predator, in my opinion, but, hey, buy stuff they can't print is what I say. And then, following these principles, you can get to financial independence, I believe, and I've seen this with many of my clients, in 10 years or less, right? Especially as we're sort of in the middle of this transfer. How and where? I would say, if you're new to Bitcoin, you haven't bought Bitcoin, ultimately, I want you to get to a place where you are holding on-chain Bitcoin in proper self-custody. But I know where we are on the adoption curve. I've talked about that a lot. We're in the early majority phase, and a lot of people in the early majority phase, they don't care. They're probably never going to do self-custody, but I want to plant that bug in your ear. But just start where you are. If we talk all the time about the Fold Visa card and the Gemini Bitcoin MasterCard, links are in the video description below for those. Those are great free ways for you to start getting cash back on your everyday purchases. And then like in Fold, they have a wheel that you spin and you win sats every day on that. But, if you've, river.com, swan.com, those are Bitcoin only exchanges. Those are great exchanges to buy Bitcoin on. But other than that, if you got Venmo, PayPal, Strike, Cash App, Robinhood, SoFi, Acorns, there's probably more now. And there will be more as banks add as well. And just the overall thing with all of this to keep in mind, I'm reading Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. And one of the great quotes in this book is, financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill. Where you behave is more important than what you know. Going back to my, sort of analogy or the example of Thomas Stanley's Millionaire Next Door, a lot of the American middle class has this notion that millionaires are geniuses. And in some cases, sure, that's true. But in the vast majority of cases, they're just regular people that learned how to behave and control their money particularly their expenditures, particularly their income, and then learning how to invest to grow that nest egg. So super, super important. We'll be doing these live streams. Pretty much I've decided to do them every week. Personal finance topics, fire style strategies, Bitcoin as your high yield savings and self-custody, and also adjacent assets. I'll be doing a video, I think next week, BTCI releases what their distributions are going to be. Stretch, I'm still looking for that $10,000 loan. I haven't found a good rate on that, so that's a little bit on hold right now, but that's an experiment that we're actively engaged in. And then Q&A. And again, the next step for most of our audience, if you're trying to integrate Bitcoin more deeply into your personal finances, the Fold card and the Gemini card, or both of those in tandem. I've got a few videos on how we use those in tandem to earn extra sats. Link is in the video description below. It's free. It does help support the channel because I do get a tiny commission, anytime somebody signs up for that, in full disclosure. And then also, if you have questions, you're stuck, you're not sure, what to do next or where to go, or you just want another set of eyes on your situation, just schedule a 30-minute call. They're very reasonable, very affordable, and I would love to talk to you. So with that, and then also, if you feel compelled, you can buy me a cup of coffee if all else fails. So I'm going to jump over into the chat and see what you guys are up to over here. So let me see if I can get rid of the display. Actually, what I can do is, I don't have to get rid of it, but I can make the chat bigger so you guys can see it. There you go. Okay, cool. So where did I leave off? How do you feel? Yeah, so welcome, Steve. Thanks for the live, Brad. Scott asked, how do you feel about the S&P 500 index funds and tech growth funds to capture more of the AI growth? Yeah, I think that, you definitely want to really look into that. I mean, I definitely recommend following Jordy Visser on that. I'm personally not in the S&P 500 index. I'm very, very heavily weighted Bitcoin, although as I'm kind of getting into this, I'm really looking at, the big bottleneck in the tech space and the AI build out is energy, and then, rare earth minerals. We're talking silver, we're talking copper, so there is going to be a lot of investment into that, into the AI space. So it's definitely worth keeping your eyes on. Are you hearing people talk about taxing robotic productivity? No, I haven't heard anything about that. It's an interesting concept, though. I'm sure, if the government can tax, if they can tax it, they will, right? Since there wouldn't be a large or worker base to tax. Yeah, I don't know. That is, yeah. And then Angelica Long says, the Lord is in control. We can trust him. I absolutely agree with you. That is, the most important thing in my life is my faith, and just trusting that the Lord is sovereign over all of this and that we don't have to be afraid. What salary is that 1K a month DCA for? Someone making 30 to 50K, that's completely unrealistic. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. That's why I say, 0.21 Bitcoin is arbitrary. It's just a target to aim at. If that's too much for you, if that doesn't fit into your budget, scale that back and just do what you can. I think the hard thing for a lot of people is that when a presenter, somebody like me or another YouTuber, goes through and says, oh, you got to get to 0.1 or you got to get to 0.5. They say, well, hey, man, if I'm making 30 to 50K, that's a whole year. Half a Bitcoin is a whole year salary. That's not realistic. I agree. So what you want to do is you want to, I'll go back to this slide that I showed a few minutes ago. Get your finances organized. Get on a cash flow plan. Track your expenses. I have a free budgeting course that's in the video description below. Especially when you have a lower income like that, every single dollar and cent is precious. And so you have to become a master of your cash flows. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you got to get out of consumer debt. You got to get control of your money, organize, make a list of all your bills, expenses, and debts, all of your sources of income, figure out what your net worth is, Get on a cash flow plan, which is a zero-based budget. I walk through all of that. It's in my free course. I used to charge $250 for that, so it's a really extensive course. If you go through that course and you do everything that I tell you, you're going to be super, super solid. And then expense tracking is really the third leg of that table. So you got to make sure that you're tracking, save receipts, reconcile them with the budget. These three skills are the most important that you can possibly have. Zion 7Z says, as a trucker, warehouse workers will be replaced max 4 years, drivers maybe 8. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then hey, Steve asks, how do funds like BTCI and Stretch fit into the 0.21 strategy? Yeah, that's where you have to get, you really have to kind of sit down and look at the numbers and look at, I would say that, my first priority, for me personally, it would be to get, to 0.21 on-chain in self-custody. Now, not everybody has, sort of the conviction around that. So if, whatever 0.21 is, if it's, IBIT or if it's BTCI or if it's Stretch, you just need to sit down do the numbers. And that's something that I do with my clients all the time. So if that's something that you're struggling with, just, book a call and we can go through that and, just do a mathematical exercise and put things into buckets, because it's not always cut and dry, maybe 33% goes into, Bitcoin and self-custody, 33% goes into BTCI, and then 33% goes into Stretch, So there's a lot of, as they say, there's 1,000 ways to skin the cat, right? If you have time, can you talk about ACH transactions against the Fold card? Yeah, I'm not sure that I understand that question. So I think I know what you're saying. So essentially, a lot of people will say, and this happened to me too when I first started using the Fold card and the Gemini card in tandem with one another. My wife and I are very disciplined financially, so we don't have a ton of expenses, right? So on the Fold card, basically the matching for your ACH transactions has to do with your overall dollar expenditure on the Fold card on a monthly basis. And so if you hit those, if you hit those targets, then you will continue as you pay off your Gemini card with your Fold card, you'll continue to get extra sats for that. I think that's what you might be talking about. Jag1733 says, hello, Brad. New to the channel here. I have 2 teenage boys in high school. What studies should they pursue, taking into consideration AI and robotics taking jobs? I would say start using AI every day. Like, this is one of the things that I'm hearing Jordy Visser talk about as well. Like, you have to become... because it's a skill set to develop. It's not, a lot of people look at AI as like a slot machine. They sit down there, or they look at it like a Google search. They'll sit down and they'll just do what they do like in a normal Google search, for example. And so what you want to do is learn how to prompt properly. Okay, so there's a simple format that I use. It's called AIM, so which is actor. So I'm telling the AI who it is. Okay, so for example, you are a financial expert that specializes in financial independence, retire early, and Bitcoin. Okay, and then the next thing you want to do is tell it what you're trying to do. I'm trying to construct a portfolio that balances on-chain Bitcoin, BTCI, and Stretch. I'm just giving you kind of an off-the-cuff, kind of example. And then you have to tell it specifically what you want it to do. So if you do those 3 things, your prompts will become much, much more specific, and the more specific you can be with AI. So I would say, just get your kids into using it. If there's a course or there are tons of content creators. Dan Koh is a great one. The MIT monk, I've watched a few of his videos. I've learned that AIM framework is something that I learned from him. The one thing I will say is that, one of the big concerns with AI is privacy. So I use Proton Mail, which is a great suite of products. And I've got a link in the video description below. You can set up a free Proton Mail account. And so Proton not only has email, basically like a Drive, a password manager. They have an excellent VPN that's actually private end-to-end encrypted, and they also have this Lumo, AI software. So yeah, so we'll just use an example. I'll just kind of walk through an example. Let's say you are a financial expert specializing in on-chain Bitcoin in self-custody and financial independence, retire early practices. I need to draw up a balanced 30 portfolio of on-chain Bitcoin, BTCI, and STRC. Let's just use round numbers, using a $100,000 starting point. I know some of you guys are going to skewer me. $100,000? What are you talking about? Starting point. Can you, and so this is where I'm telling it exactly what can you draw up let's say a weekly dollar cost average plan to acquire this goal. Please feel free to ask follow-up questions. Okay, so I've got that in there. It's thinking, sure, I can put together a weekly dollar cost average schedule for a 100K portfolio, split 30% on-chain, 30% BTCI to make the plan. Yeah, so this basically will, and so you can then from that, and this is not even a very good prompt, to be honest, and then from that, you can ask it follow-up questions or whatever. So, yeah, but to answer your question, I would say get your 2 teenage boys that are in high school, get them using the tools, and you want to do it as well. You want to use the tools as well. I'm thinking that, depending on, the profession, I think the 4-year university, especially from a liberal arts perspective, I just don't know that, I don't know that I would recommend that. Now, obviously engineering and medical and, some of those things, I think that's probably going to be relevant for a while. The point is that, this is the thing. This is the thing that is going to give you and your kids a superpower, because most people are not going to be learning this. Okay, so I got 0.313 from Fawcett back in 2019 and been DCing and the whole time also. That's awesome. Yeah, keep your... one thing I want to say is I like to hear people's goals, but I would very much encourage you against sharing the amount of Bitcoin that you have on the internet, just for security reasons. At some point when Bitcoin is at $1 million per coin or $10 million per coin, your stack is going to be worth a lot, and so you just want to kind of be thinking in those terms. My digital asset holdings are diversified: BTC, IBIT, BTCI, and Stretch. Yes, that's really good. That's pretty much the majority of what we have as well. What do the fees look like for self-custody? Yeah, so self-custody is one of those things you can totally DIY it. I offer self-custody coaching for my clients. The first step I would say is to set up a 30-minute call. That way I can sort of ascertain where you are in the process, because at the end of the day, if you're fairly tech savvy, I can just send you in the direction of, the right resources, like the right software, the right hardware wallets. If you want to set up a node, I can kind of set you off in the direction of starting to acquire those things. And then if you want me to walk you through the process of setting those up, I have packages for that. But yeah, I only really talk about that on one-to-one calls. I don't really have public-facing pricing for that. So Angelina says, I would love to hear at some point how you were able to save 80% of your income. Well, yeah, so my wife and I were, basically I was my last 5 years in corporate America. before that period of time, we were just sideways financially. I think our net worth was somewhere between 50,000 and 75,000 for probably the first, definitely a few years of our marriage. And we just weren't moving the ball. We didn't have any debt. I had already paid off the $174,000 of debt. And, most of you guys have heard that story ad nauseum. But essentially, I got, hired back into corporate software sales. I think my first job, I had a $60K base salary. I changed companies 4 times in that 5 years, and each time was a nice bump in income. So we were already in the posture where we were super, super frugal. We were minimalists, and we just said, okay, I do not want to go back to corporate America. I hate corporate America. I don't think but I know that it is a shovel that we can use for a few years our goal was to get to $1 million in net worth. Okay. Now I was going to try to last for 10 years. Right. So, So we basically just followed the FIRE principles of trying to, we stayed, our finances are super organized. We keep track of every single penny that comes in and goes out, zero-based budget, tracking expenses and all of that. And we just gamified it as much as we could. It's like, okay, cool, we could do this. And so we took fewer vacations. We just decided for a short period of time we were going to make what we thought were going to be extreme sacrifices. But as you get into the gamification process of the whole thing, it actually turns into a lot of fun, especially when you see like, man, the finish line is getting closer and closer and closer. So long story short, we didn't make it 10 years. We made it 5, and we made it a little over halfway to our goal financially, but that was enough capital, and we had treated that capital in terms of saving and investing to a place that it was already starting to grow. And I mean, it's ballooned since then. So that's a really, really great question. So you explained what I had in mind about ACH, and okay, great. It's coming for some jobs. I guess we'll see. I don't know. Hi everyone. Reaccion APR. Will live streams be a weekly event? Yes, that is the plan. It might, depending on my client's call schedule, it may be 11 a.m. It may be 2 p.m. I'm kind of settling. I kind of like this 2 p.m. slot. If you guys are more into that, it seems like there's more attendance today than there was the past couple of weeks. So so I would love to hear from you guys, in the comments section. Like I said, if you have questions, you know where to find me. I appreciate all the new subscribers. Like I think, last week's Friday video, I think there were like 1,300 new subscribers that came just from that video. So welcome to the channel. I'm here for you guys. Essentially my heart, my passion, my mission of this channel is to help millennials and Gen X, more deeply integrate Bitcoin into their personal finances so they can reach financial independence in 10 years or less. Now, obviously, you don't have to be a millennial or Gen X. The principles are ubiquitous, but in my own life experience and sort of the lane that I've been running in for the past 17 years, that seems to be the audience that I resonate the most with. So let's see. Will live streams be weekly? Yes. Put a 1 in the chat if you would like live streams once a week. Hey, great. Yeah. Hey, appreciate the engagement. Yeah. Put a 1 in the chat if you would like to see live streams once a week. Okay, so any other questions, comments, smart remarks? I love the interaction. You guys are asking great questions, so my encouragement is to, stay sharp, get as much Bitcoin as you can. Obviously not financial advice, do your own research, but let me know. Scott says, I'm happy the channel is growing. You deserve it. Thank you very much. I'm not sure that I agree that I deserve it, but as long as you think so, that's great. Yeah, so we're getting some 1s. All right, well, great. So based on that feedback, I will see you guys next Thursday. I'll probably do it again at 2 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, type 1 if you would like to have it at, type 2 if you would like to see it at 11 a.m. Eastern, or type 3 if you would rather at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'd love to see that as well. Yeah, so it looks like the price is just, it's kind of trending down a little bit today. Again, 4 to 5 year timeline, it's not that big of a deal. So just keep on keeping on, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. It's been great hanging out with you guys. Okay, looks like, yeah, I'm seeing some 3s. Awesome. Okay, all right. Okay, good. Yeah, so afternoon seems to be winning so far. Yeah, keep me posted, guys, and we'll try some different things as well. But I appreciate you showing up today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.